Okay, I hope everybody had a nice holiday there. I'm surprised people must be all sitting at home with their feet up, digesting meals and thinking, I want to talk about solar. So that's good. I've got a couple of things here. Tony had sent me through these articles. I looked through those. Those were very interesting there, Tony. One was sort of a recap about California being the first now to require solar commercial or solar in commercial buildings and battery ready in commercial buildings. They'd already done that for residential. So this is now in commercial. They had a very complicated formula, it looked like, for the different types of industrial buildings. If you're a grocery store, you got to have this ratio. If you're this, you got to have that ratio, of course, because government's involved, they got to make it complicated. They also said they want the charging for these batteries to be remote controlled. So essentially a phone app for the battery systems. And they did list 3 different types of battery controls that have to be incorporated into these systems. Basic control, meaning you can charge your batteries from your solar, you can discharge to load. That's sort of your basic battery control. Time of use pricing control. So I think we're all familiar with time of use, where you can shift your loads and shift how you're doing it based on the price of power. And then the one that was very interesting to me was the advanced demand response controls. So they're basically saying all commercial buildings have to be battery ready and have to be ready to let the utility use their batteries in demand response control, which, boy, that sounds a little big brothery to me, but you know, it's amazing. I mean, they're basically mandating virtual utilities. You know, they're mandating in all commercial enterprises. I mean, that's going to be, I don't know how they're going to survive court challenges on that if people want to bring it up, but it's an interesting concept. The other article was about repowering, which I hadn't really thought about, which was kind of cool. The secondary market for solar components, primarily solar panels, but also inverters, I assume switches, things of that nature. They mostly focused on solar panels. A lot of reasons why these products enter into the secondary market. People upgrade their systems. That's one reason. Deals fall through. They talked a lot about big deals where the whole system is installed and then never commissioned. So then, you know, the whole thing has to be taken apart, resold on the secondary market. Buildings are sold, torn down, but it's got solar on top of it. We see that all the time, like one Walmart, it's 3 years old, they tear it down and put a Walmart across the street for whatever reason. Don, you probably know the accounting benefits of that, as opposed to actually working towards saving the planet. We'll not worry about how Walmart has not been working towards saving the planet. And if panels are 10 years old or less, they certainly have resale value. About 50% of the cost of a new panel. So that's kind of nice. We know from warranty standpoints, panels do degrade about 0.5% per year. So that's, they're saying, NREL says less than 1% per year. I think that's pretty conservative. And the one thing to worry about with all of these resale is typically the warranties do not transfer. So if you're buying used product, you're getting it without any kind of warranty, which doesn't seem to bother a lot of people, especially if you're buying on the cheap, you know, I mean, so if you're getting them cheap enough. And the other bit of news, I mean, most of the news this week, because it's the holiday season, most of the solar news was all about big installations, which get kind of redundant and repetitive. But I did see that Enphase IQ8s are now shipping. So they're supposedly out there to the distributors. So that's good. So that was the news there. I was going to talk a bit, and I will talk a bit about the Ford Lightning because Don had brought that up. But I had a couple of things here, and I see John, why don't I jump on yours? Are you able to share the pictures, or do you want me to share the pictures of your bird thing?
Deterrent.
Yeah, your bird deterrent on solar arrays.
It'd probably be easier for you to share if you want.
Okay, yeah, this was kind of cute. You can just talk about what you did. All right, hopefully that's coming up. I assume you were having a problem with birds perching and pooping. Is that pretty much what you were dealing with there?
Yep. Yeah, they tend to make a mess, especially, I noticed it more in the spring than any time, but even in the fall, I would see them, the droppings along the top edge there. And having seen how much even a small amount of shade can impact the panel performance, I decided it was worth a little effort to get something installed there. I guess one of the more common ones are those like metal tines that stick up, but that seemed like it was going to look a little gaudy along the top. So I was trying to go for something a little more discreet. So I went with fishing line. I think I've seen wire strung the same way, but I wanted to stay away from metallic if I could. So I ran some fishing line along those four vertical, they're made out of fiberglass, little posts or rods. And I glued glass beads on them to string the fiberglass through, or not fiberglass, the fishing line, and put a little weight on it to keep it somewhat taut. And I guess we'll see how it lasts, and if it works, if it keeps the birds away, and if it doesn't cause any other problems.
Does that show the weight hanging there? Did I manage to switch those pictures okay?
There's a gray box in the middle that's not showing anything. I think it's not shared.
All right, I'll share here. Yeah, I don't know that it wants to let me switch pictures in the middle, but that's what you've got there. You've got weight on those to keep those things taut.
Yeah, lightly taut.
Yeah.
It's just a 1 ounce fishing weight, but it's enough. Well, I don't know. We'll find out, because I just finished putting it up a few days ago. I'll be curious to see how it does when rain starts to collect on the wires, when ice, things like that. Well, I guess we'll see. It's still in the experimental stage.
Yeah, I know that a lot of solar arrays near the seashore, of course, have that as a big issue with the seagulls and the like. I haven't really had problems, except periodically, when the starlings all come and congregate, and I found that I might get 100 birds up on the solar array all of a sudden, and then when they leave, it basically needs a bath. So but it's not a perpetual issue that I've had to deal with. But you must have more resident birds in your area. So.
Well, and I've got some bigger birds that leave bigger evidence of having been there.
Right. Okay. And then Eric, you were going to share about your experience with your solar array. You had sent me some pictures. I'll try and share those as well. But why don't you talk a little bit about it?
All right. I work for DCNR Pennsylvania State Parks, and had taken a course with Jay several years ago with my daughter, and I learned enough to be dangerous. So I started getting parks involved in some small scale stuff, and we put up 4 panels on one of our maintenance building and put microinverters in there, and that was to net meter one of our electric vehicles. And from there, it's kind of been a dream for my wife and I to put up a solar array here and grid tied and run our house. And so finally, after much debate and planning, the end of this summer, I decided to bite and try and get things done. And 4 months is not enough time to get her done, because I came down to the last few days and it was getting close. But this is a photo of my wife, and when we finally got the pipe, and the sourcing pipe is interesting too. I checked some places around here and it was running about $17 a foot. And I found a place down near Tyrone in Pennsylvania, which is like the Aldi's of the pipe world. I think they were getting the seconds from Altoona Pipe and Steel. And so I was able to get my pipe for about $11 a foot. Thing was, nothing was consistent, so I had to kind of measure and cut on the fly, and we got that back up. And
Oh,
once I got the order from Alt E, which was a long time coming too, when you're trying to meet a crunch time here, my son, who had been through one of Jay's courses in Ohio, came up once I had everything up, and we put up 32 445 watt Canadian solar panels. And then from there, it was all wiring things in and getting it ready and having the inspector come out. And one of the things, I was sweating it. I was nervous about all this, but having the inspector come out and look things over and said all was good. It was like, yay, all my, my inverters were wired in right and all that fun stuff. And he says, how are you doing the tap? And I think I must have missed that part in the course. Probably day 4 or 5 of Jay's course, and my brain was full of day 3. So, long
Well,
story
he
short,
must be talking about a supply side connection there.
Right.
Did you go load side?
It was supply side.
Okay.
What I ended up doing is getting a couple of vampires. Lowe's said they had them. I went to Lowe's. They didn't have them. It's basically a glorified clamp that bites into the insulation and makes a really good secure contact. The inspector okayed those, but Lowe's didn't have them. It was special order. So I special ordered, and Lowe's canceled my order the next day. In the interim, I had talked to a local electric supplier here in DuBois, Shadler Yesco, and they had a couple, a truck drive away basically. And so I wasn't going to call the utility to have the disconnect until I had those things in hand. And it's a good thing I waited, because it was Friday afternoon at 3:40 and Unilec closes at 4 that I got my hands on the thing and made the phone call, and Unilec scheduled to come out on Monday. So they came out, disconnected. I made the tap with the vampires and promptly discovered how much fun trying to commission inverters was.
Yeah.
Because it was not a smooth thing. And I watched all the instructional videos that, show how to do that. Well, that's when everything works right. Looks real easy. Long story short, Unilec shut me off for the night because they needed to test for the 1741, the anti-islanding. And since I couldn't get the inverters online to have them test that, I had to wait till the next morning. Long story short, Tuesday, December 21st, I got both inverters up and running, and they both shut down properly. So we've been running ever since. And I think my ulcer is starting to heal and I'm able to eat again.
Yeah.
Now I'm just looking for sunny weather and nice cold temperatures. So
What kind of inverters did you use?
I ended up using Sunny Boy 7.0s. So they're the solar panels. It's a 14.2 kilowatt array, and the 2 inverters are 14 kW together.
Uh-huh. And so you're basically treating it as 2 arrays and then both arrays feeding in?
Right. And when I register them on the Sunny Boy portal, I can just flip between one array and the other. And the reason for the size of that thing is Unilec actually allows you, if you're within 2 miles and you're paying for the same meters kind of thing, you can aggregate. So I put this in where I grew up, which we now treat as a rental. But my house, a mile down the road, I can actually net meter out this array too. So I'm getting full price. Any kilowatt hours that get credited off that residence, above and beyond that, it starts coming off my meter down here. So the idea was to size it to actually run both. That's why it's a little oversized.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
Okay.
nice. Basically, I'm getting full price off
Do you
my
feed
meter.
them? Do you feed them into 2 AC disconnects, or feed them both into 1 AC disconnect?
What I did is I fed them both into a Midnight Solar combiner box with breakers. And actually, that was a little bit of a conundrum too. I got the combiner box, and all it had was a DC bus bar. And so I called Alt E, and they're like, no, it should have both. And I said, it doesn't. And I think it was intentional because the stickers are already applied for the DC.
Yeah.
So they quick sent me the AC bus bar, and that little bit of gray hair and ulcer producing thing was resolved. But basically there are two pole 40 amp breakers there that combine the 2 there. And I also have a shutoff at the array there, not to mention the disconnect at the house. So, and then DC disconnects as well. So I can shut it off several different ways, but that seemed to be the safest way to go.
That's good. Yeah, I'd never really realized how important the aggregation issue is. I've been doing a lot of commercial evaluations, and I just went up near Akron. There was a campground, and they actually have 6 meters there at the one facility. And
Right.
so the only way that the system will work is if they can aggregate all of the meters, because most of them are for camping facilities, and all of those camping facilities are in the woods. So the only place you could put solar is next to the centralized activity building, which happens to be the place that uses the least amount of electricity. So it's First Energy, so I'm not holding up a lot of hope that they're going to be cooperative, since First Energy is pretty evil. But it's good that your group is doing it as a matter of course. So
Yeah, anything within 2 miles, they'll let us net meter those together.
okay, well, that's
So in
good.
the park as well, if we could put up an array that's within 2 miles of the park, we could net meter the entire park. And I'm not sure DCNR is being held to the same type thing. It's, you know, it's a state agency. It's not a residential, but.
Yeah, they'll probably cut you some slack. So anybody else have any questions about that, or any comments before I jump into the Ford Lightning thing? See if anyone's got anything to bring up. All right, well, I'll address Don's thing, and if anybody has questions as I go through. Don, you had brought up the whole idea about the Ford Lightning. And so I went in, and just to refresh people's memories, the Ford Lightning is the fully electric F-150 that Ford is coming out with in 2022. And they make a lot of claims about it. There's a lot of interesting online videos. Almost all of them talk about how fast they go and all the cool features. So from a solar installer perspective, it's more like Top Gear than you know, how to figure out how the bloody thing actually works. In fact, I went through a lot of videos and a lot of articles. I still don't quite know if the charging station incorporates the inverter or not. That's something that I could not get a clear answer. Some of the videos said it did, some of the videos said it didn't, but clearly the people making the videos didn't know the difference between a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour, because they kept making that mistake that 9.6 kilowatts will serve your house for 3 days. And I'm thinking, no, it doesn't work that way, guys. You know, maybe the 98 kilowatt hour capacity will, but the 9.6 kilowatts is just how many things you can turn on at the same time. So they don't understand, but they know that it's got a full-size spare tire, which was very important to them. So that's all good. Here's some of the things, and then Don will get into your pricing comparison, because that was interesting. It does have 9.6 kilowatts of peak output, exportable power, they'll say. It can be exported either through the charging station to your home, or through outlets that are in the Ford itself, in the vehicle itself. It does have a 98 kilowatt hour capacity. That's the sort of the base model. I think it's a little bit bigger for the supercharged one, but I kind of ignored that because, you know, let's just stick with the base things. So 98 kilowatt hours, they're basically saying that's 3 days of power. Well, that's if you're using a standard suburban home, 30 kilowatt hours per day, assuming you can go to about a 92% depth of discharge. That's probably pretty safe to say. I don't know if the 98 is usable capacity or full capacity. 230 miles of range, which is interesting, again, at the base model. Although a lot of the articles were talking about longer range, even longer than the souped up model that they've got. 10,000 pounds of towing, 2,000 pound payload. So it's a meaty vehicle. Fastest car that they've, fastest pickup ever. So that's important, I guess. off-road capable. So this is the reason I'm mentioning this is because this is a, you know, a macho vehicle. This is a meaty vehicle. And I think that's important. I mean, these guys, you don't want to come out with a Prius pickup truck, you know, you want something that the guys who like that kind of vehicle are going to feel like it's macho enough, you know, it's fast enough, it's strong enough, it can do everything. They're claiming 40% less maintenance than a gasoline engine vehicle, which makes sense. The real amazing thing is the price tag. I mean, $41,000 for this thing before incentives. So that's astounding. I mean, that's basically regular pickup prices. And of course, with the $7,500 federal credit for electric vehicles, you could bring that down a bit. It does weigh 1,000 pounds more than a gas engine vehicle, comparable gas engine vehicle. It comes standard with a 32 amp charger, but that's just a regular charger. So if you're using that charger, you're not going to be able to supply power to your home. That's just regular old charging station. And if you use that charger, it's going to take about 20 hours to charge the vehicle. So that's a downside, you know, for sure. And then you can buy, although apparently none are for sale yet, an 80 amp Charge Station Pro, which supposedly sends 19.2 kilowatts to the batteries, reduces charging time to 8 hours. So, and that is the unit that apparently also integrates the inverter charger, although whether it's in that charging station or connects to it, I'm unclear. But that would be then the ability to use your vehicle as a battery backup for your home. Now, hopefully all of us realize that if you're doing that, you're going to need to have some sort of transfer switch to disconnect from the utility. So whether, again, that's built into the unit or part of a separate piece of equipment, it's unclear, but it's got to be there. I mean, it's got to be there in some form or fashion where you can disconnect from the utility in order to run your home. So, I mean, they all gloss over it real quickly in all the little ads, you know, plug your vehicle in and it'll provide 3 days of backup to your home. Easy peasy, no problem, you know, which probably is not going to be a no problem, as Eric ran into trying to commission the system on a regular inverter is hard enough. Who knows when, because most of the controls are going to be within the Ford itself, within the vehicle. The sensing, the bidirectional switching, all of that's in the vehicle. So the inverter charger, and maybe I'll turn over some of the comments here to Tony, because I assume you're in the charging world. What is do you have any advance info on this whole system?
So a little bit. A lot of your kind of what you were expecting is 100% true. So one of the things that Ford is wrestling with right now, and it's also true with Rivian after speaking with those guys, there's the vision. This is how everything happens. There's the vision of what this could be and how exciting and blah, 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 blah. And then there's like there's the strategic level and then there's a tactical level. And the tactical level is some pretty, it'll require some pretty extensive upgrades to one's home to fully capture all of this functionality, right? So Rivian and I was speaking with a guy in charge of all of the charging network for Rivian, which is another electric pickup, only high end.
I'll interrupt you there because Ford apparently created this in conjunction with Rivian.
Yeah,
So
Ford was an investor in Rivian. There's a lot of like incestuous things that go on. That's the same thing was true with Tesla. There's auto companies who obviously want to make a little bet on some emerging technology, and then there's some arrangement for IP and tech sharing that goes on. But for Ford and Rivian's case, in order to do a lot, like the biggest hump that they both have to solve is, in order to do electric trucks or SUVs, it requires a big ass battery pack. And the problem is you're constrained by the infrastructure to charge the electric vehicle, right? So if you have a 240, and not all houses do, if you have a 240 outlet in your garage, you might be able to charge what standard is like 7.2, 7.6 kilowatts, right? In Rivian's case, their like extended range pickup is 180 kilowatt hour battery pack, right?
Whoa.
So if you're charging that with a dinky 7.2 kilowatt level 2 AC charger, you're going to be doing it for a while, right? Like more hours than there are in a day. So there's a little bit of a conundrum from the residential side on how to exactly roll out things like this. Now, if you're using it right, you're going to plug in every day. So you shouldn't be in a situation where you're just like driving your truck for 5 days without charging it, and then it'll take you an entire day plus to charge it, right? So typically, you're going to recharge it overnight, the amount that you're using it that day, right? But a lot of this is going to require some pretty significant upgrades to the home to use it in its full functionality. But like this is part of the transition, right? You're having a 21st century piece of technology at times being adopted by 20th or 19th century homes. There's going to have to be a little bit of retrofitting that goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking too, when you're talking about that, using the mileage that you drive may be something to recharge, but they're advertising this as a portable job site generator. And some of their advertisements, they were plugging in multiple power saws and lighting an entire building, and they have 360-degree lighting coming from this. I mean, these things are going to be drained down pretty quickly. And so that's going to be interesting, because in fact, I was just thinking about that for our home, thinking, oh, that would be kind of cool to own this.
Sure.
But there's no way I have an 80 amp line. Where would I hook it into? How am I going to have to redo this? Where would this take place? Where would I put the transfer switch? How would I connect that in? So there's going to be, certainly $6,000 or $7,000 worth of work on our electrical to make it ready for something this meaty. But I mean, if you're building a new home and you have this as an idea, well, then it doesn't add a whole lot to the cost of designing this. And and also there was an announcement that Sunrun and Ford are looking at integrating it solar into the system.
So I spoke to Sunrun about this specifically, and a lot of it's kind of hush hush. There's kind of a mass scramble that's happening for consolidation, and it's good for mental health for people like me to read about like the first wave of electricity and how it was like the Wild West. Like people couldn't agree on anything. Everyone kind of had their own way of doing things, and there was a massive decentralization, and then there was a big push for consolidation. And we're kind of in that wave right now as it relates to all of this stuff, right? Electric mobility, energy storage systems, solar. There's a lot of people throwing a lot of different ideas out there, and there's a push from some of the larger entities to start kind of consolidating a lot of that technology. SunPower and Wallbox also announced a joint partnership that in 2 years or whatever, multi-billion-dollar charging company, multi-billion-dollar solar company, we're going to do some joint product development as well to kind of more seamlessly combine solar storage and EV charging.
Okay, well, I think it's hard to underestimate how big an impact this is going to have. To me, it's one of these innovations that it's almost like sort of like the Prius coming in, what it did for the hybrid vehicle. This is going to do for the electric vehicle, sort of mainstream it. We run the risk of it being like the next Edsel. If it comes out and it flops, that's going to set things back quite a lot. But if it comes out and it's great and it does all the things that it's claiming to do, I mean, it's gonna revolutionize how we look at transportation. I mean, we've talked about that before. If you're going to invest $40,000 in a battery bank, why not drive it? And that's what we're getting to. So let me share Don, your economic evaluation
Sure.
here of this, and you can talk a little bit about the implications of that.
Yeah, to be honest, I was looking for additional battery storage and watched a number of things on the Lightning. And when I started looking at the pricing, they, as you mentioned, they're going to have either 98 kilowatt hour base or a 131 kilowatt hour upgraded version. And if you price it out to the prices that they are advertising, pretty much the car is cheaper than buying that amount of batteries. Now, I understand that the purchasing price power of Ford is different than all of the solar panel people and all the solar industry put together. So that's part of it. But these would be high performance batteries. And I understand there's going to be, balance of systems to get it in, as we've talked about, as you've mentioned. But it just seems crazy to me that when I did the numbers, and again, that's what I'm looking to see if I'm missing something fundamental. The batteries themselves, if you were just going to buy an equivalent amount of batteries for standard solar stuff, you'd spend more than you would spend buying the truck. Even both sides will have a balance of systems and have stuff like that, and there'll be ins and outs, but it just seems just crazy that they can have the pricing that much different. I mean, Tony, maybe you're in this industry. I mean, am I missing something fundamental here, or is it?
No, you're not. Is the bottom line. You're spot on. A lot of it does come with kind of economies of scale that you talked about. Another part of this is like this industry is so new. Everyone's just trying to kind of eat as much as they possibly can. The kind of to add on to this is a kind of phenomenal analysis. And if you're okay, I would love to, if you could send this to me, that would be awesome.
Sure, no problem.
I've done something similar, so I've had some conversations with Ultium, which is the multi-billion-dollar partnership between General Motors and LG Energy Solutions, right? They came together, formed a company called Ultium, and they're providing all of the batteries for GM's electric vehicle fleet. To add on top of this, and this is like a little bit of kind of insider baseball, hush-hush stuff, but what I'd also add to this is the thought, like the holy grail, like the bleeding edge of this industry is the discussion around what happens. So when you use a vehicle takes a tremendous amount of energy to move, right? Meat and metal, in time and space, a tremendous amount of energy.
It's got to be quick. It's got to be
it has to be quick. Exactly. It's a very energy intensive process. So the kind of bleeding edge, the like what is right around the corner conversation that some folks at very high levels are having. You can have a battery pack that is totally suitable for an electric vehicle. It's a big ass battery pack, as we've discussed, right? So 98 or 131 kilowatt hour battery pack. That can get degraded a little bit to the point where it no longer is suitable to propel an F-150 or even a Chevy Bolt, right? At the 40 to 60 kilowatt hour range. That does not mean it's not suitable for energy storage, right?
Sure.
It can still, like, let's just say we'll make up numbers here because I know the GM numbers better than I know the Ford numbers. But this 98 kilowatt hour battery pack in a Ford F-150. Let's say that gets degraded 5-10 years, and it goes down to the point where it's no longer suitable to propel an F-150 and to tow things that you'd use a truck for. But that it could still pretty safely hold, maybe 70 kilowatt hours of energy, with a tremendous, a mind-numbing amount of energy. So then you have this very interesting situation where you have an electric vehicle battery that's no longer suitable to propel an electric vehicle, but one that could have insane benefits used only as a stationary storage system. Right. So there's now the big so what, and what kind of makes this a holy grail issue is making sure on a cell by cell level that battery pack is not going to go exothermal and burn down your house or your business. Right. So like you know, when you're talking about used electric vehicle battery packs, everyone's thinking about, oh shit, like Lordstown incident or GM recall, like what happens, you know, how do you fix that? But that's like what's being researched pretty heavily right now, because then you take your numbers, which are spot on, and then you think about, well, what's a used F-150 battery pack going to cost? Half that,
Right.
a quarter of that. Now you're talking about, you know, we're making up numbers, but 70 kilowatt hours of energy for 20 cents a watt, right? And like, what does that mean? What's the secondary markets for that, right? So that's, again, like that is like the bleeding edge of what's happening in this industry. And I'm here to tell you, after having conversations with Ultium, GM, Ford, Rivian, like the answer isn't like self-evident. Like there's a lot of like, what are we going to do about this? Like, how are we going to work this? But that's kind of something else to kind of consider. It's absolutely with all of your analysis here, and it's awesome analysis, kind of generally speaking. But then what do you do when you're talking about the second life EV battery pack? And that's the real Wild West right now. It's like 2 steps ahead, right? We're not even, F-150 Lightning isn't even available to buy. So we're talking about like what happens when, you know, 5 years from now, when those batteries become available for a secondary market, what does that look like, right? But that's kind of the bleeding edge behind this.
No,
Well, that's
that makes
going to
perfect
fit.
sense.
That's going to fit right into Don and our region, because we're used to having old pickup trucks sitting outside that don't run.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll just hook them into the vehicle or into the house.
But you laugh about that, Jay, but the congressman for our area here has done this at his house. He took an old Tesla battery from a wrecked Tesla, refurbished it. Once his first set of battery, you know, he had a normal old lead acid battery bank system, I think. He refurbished it, and he has a video that goes through the whole process where he, you know, here's where I go get the truck or the old Tesla. Here's where I rewire it. Here's where I, you know, buy a computer program to monitor it. And he went through and did this whole thing a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is gonna, like I said before, it's gonna really revolutionize, you know, how we look at battery backup, how we look at, and it's all good. We'll just have to keep an eye on it, because obviously Ford, it doesn't have the exclusive on this technology. If they come out and they're successful, then everybody's going to be coming out with their own versions of this. And we've seen, as the price of lithium ion batteries get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, the corresponding cost of vehicles should become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as well. And maybe we're just seeing the first indication of that with this Ford Lightning, because they clearly feel they can make a profit at that price point. We'll just have to wait and see if it comes to pass. But to my mind, it's all good. It's all exciting. So
Yeah, but to Tony's point, if you economically can capture this second life of the batteries, you're going to decimate the existing. Well, not maybe not decimate. They're making really good profits now. I think everybody that I talk to in the solar industry, like when I have just regular electricians, my cousin electrician, he was helping me put some stuff in. He called some people to get some equipment, and they're like, "Hey, you should be getting into this. You know, all you have to do is put the word solar on it. You can double the prices."
yeah.
It's for the same stuff. I mean, because you know, it was somebody he knew that was doing it. He's like, "Just do this, and you know, you can increase the prices. They'll pay for it." But I mean, the batteries, clearly, if they can produce these batteries this cheap for themselves, use them for 5 years or 10 years, whatever the eventual life is going to be. You know, I can't see how the solar guys, unless they suddenly become, you know, unless that scales up the same way with California requiring everybody to have solar and everybody else. But, you know, there's just not the purchasing power apparently to get economic batteries relative to the car industry at the moment.
Well, Don, the other side of this is like, they're making shit tons of money, profit on their battery packs, right? So, you know, kind of, I was speaking with CATL, which is the largest battery manufacturer in the world. They're out of China. They're who Tesla uses in Shanghai for their batteries. They were saying that at scale, it's 100. They could give me a battery pack and BMS directly for $150 a kilowatt hour or below. So if you do like the kilowatt hour comparison of like other folks, I mean, we're like, it's like $800 a kilowatt hour. You could probably do really easy math on the Powerwall, but I think if I remember correctly, it's something like $800 a kilowatt hour. So they're getting it for, or they're making it for between $100 and $150 a kilowatt hour, and they're selling it for like $800, $900, $1,000 a kilowatt hour.
Oh, yeah.
This gravy train is going to exist for a few more years until the costs of batteries continue to go down, and competition will drive prices down as well.
Well, I think as solar installers, we're going to start seeing the integration from a vehicle perspective. That will become the norm, that your battery backup is integrated in with your vehicle. And probably the used market is going to be more for stationary, commercial applications, industrial, whatever. Even utility scale, they could put a bunch of those things together. Especially when they're talking about having to curtail production of say wind turbines or whatever, because there's no load demand. If you can throw them into used battery banks, I know AEP was working with this years ago in Columbus with the Chevy Volt batteries. So it's interesting how this is all evolving so quickly. All right. Well, any other comments before we jump off?
Ben has a question. Ford is partnering with a South Korean company called SK for their batteries. So what's happening right now globally is all of the major auto manufacturers are pairing themselves with battery manufacturers in either a straight joint venture or some kind of collaborative approach. So it's GM and LG, they're doing a pairing, and that pairing is called Ultium. Ford and SK are doing a pairing, and that's terrible name, but SK Blue Oval is their joint venture. And then VW is doing the same thing in Europe. So all of them are pairing with a battery company to kind of help them catch up, essentially, because they don't have the institutional knowledge of how to electrify and how to do batteries. A lot of their stuff is in traditional internal combustion engines, both unleaded gas and diesel. So they're trying to play catch up, and they're doing that with pairing with kind of a subject matter expert in the battery space.
Is SK going to be the one? Are they going to be in the plant they're opening in Kentucky? They're opening 2 battery plants, my understanding. Is that SK in Ford, or is that just Ford's own version, and then they're doing SK in Korea or wherever?
No, that'll be kind of like the joint venture framework. Exactly the same thing that GM built in Lordstown, Ohio. With their $2 billion+ plant. I think they're doing another spinoff in Tennessee. Same kind of concept. It's essentially, it's all in all of these joint ventures and all of these factories. It's whoever the battery manufacturer is, like the brains of the operation, and whoever the auto manufacturer is just kind of slaps their name on it because they're the big they're the big buyer, right? And that's kind of how it works.
The sugar daddy, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks, Tony and Don, for that.
Yeah, Devon, listening to the conversation with I recently got a quotation from a supplier from China, 380 kilowatt hour high voltage battery bank, 384 volts at 1,000 amp hour for about 85,000 US. How that price kind of compares to the market in the States?
So you're saying how big was it? What's the price per kilo?
384 kilowatt hours at 85,000 US.
85,000.
300 and what?
340.
384 kilowatt hours. At,
So it's maybe 225.
Yeah, exactly. 221 and some change. Yeah. That's
225. That's a pretty good price, it sounds like. You're saying you can get them wholesale for about 150. So yeah, it's almost wholesale price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, just one more question, Jay. I see these new battery banks, especially in the lithium side, now going high voltage, 384 volts, 5 something, 7 something. But with respect to the National Electrical Code, have they taken that into consideration in terms of energy storage using high voltage battery banks for residential purpose?
Yeah, in fact, in the last National Electrical Code, they basically took the voltage limitation off of these battery banks. So it's kind of unlimited as long as the homeowner or they're inaccessible. So as long as you can't get in there and play with the terminals, they're kind of unlimited. So.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
All right. Okay, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. I think that was a good discussion, and we'll see you all next Tuesday.
Hey,
All right.
Jay.
Take care. Yeah.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
Are you and Annie still doing the thanks for nothing starting in January, or is that?
We haven't done that during the COVID years because we don't really go anywhere or spend any money anyway. So
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
know if
we're-
do you guys run on batteries out there when you disconnect like that?
No, in the past, we did just simply turn off the electricity and go with, like oil lamps and our heat from our wood stove. But because we have a solar array and it nets out, we kind of just assume that's not buying anything. It's still
Right.
grid tied, but it's a little bit cheating, but we were cheating, so.
No, I just wondered if you had any kind of battery going on out there.
I don't, but I want to. I'm thinking about rigging up a sort of a poor man's version of the Lightning. I was going to get a golf cart and hook in an inverter charger to it, and then do a manual transfer switch, disconnect from the grid, and see if we couldn't make something happen, just for fun, just as a project. I thought maybe I'll get a University of Dayton engineering student to do it as a project. I'll just buy all the bits and he'll put it all together.
That's awesome.
Take the danger. He'll connect it. It's like that looks dangerous, Indy. You go first,
He gets 3 credit hours. Why not?
Yeah, it's all good for him. He'll probably write a thesis about it or something.
Oh, yeah. A graduate student probably even.
I know. We had a student who did that with a manure thing. We were wanting to use the heat from composting to heat up water to keep the water from freezing in the
heat the
winter
water?
time for livestock. Yeah, because when manure composts, it generates heat.
Oh, I get it. It generates smell.
Yeah,
too,
they heat greenhouses that way.
Yeah, well,
With
we were running
composting.
coils of water through the base of this pile, the muck pile,
Mhm.
and then it was warming it enough to keep it from freezing. And
Yeah.
that's what we were wanting to do. So she wrote up a big paper about all that and figured out how many BTUs it was generating and all that stuff that's kind of irrelevant. She did it and then we tore it apart and threw it away, but because it was kind of a big eyesore and, stunk. So, all right. Okay. Well, take care, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Right.